Hello, everyone, and welcome to our show From Fear to Fearless. This show is all about sharing stories of ordinary people who have done extraordinary things despite their fear. Our mission of this show is to share stories of others who have pushed past their fear and done some amazing things. Today, I have a very special guest, no other than Lisa Anna Polymer, and she is the founder and CEO of Light Your Leadership Inc., creator of LYL Talk podcast, and the author of international best-selling book Light a Fire in Their Hearts: The Truth About Leadership. So tell us a little bit, Lisa. Welcome. Thank you
Thank
for
you so
being
much,
here.
Camila. So wonderful to be here with you today.
Thank you. Tell me a little bit about your leadership book that you have
Yes,
here.
light a fire in their hearts. Well, so that was basically a labor of love. Um,
Mm,
I burnt out 3 times in my life while I was working corporate, and so I decided to go off and start my business in HR. I was working in HR for most of the time, and then I focused in on trying to find solutions so other people don't have to suffer at work. Because I really believe that you can show up at work, give your best, and have a good, fulfilling life. So what I did was I wrote a book called Light a Fire in Their Hearts: The Truth About Leadership, and started a company called Light Your Leadership Inc. And it's all about focusing on how to support leaders so that they know how to engage people and help them be their best, to give their best and do it in healthy ways.
mm,
And our tagline is, love your life as a leader.
nice.
And when you do that, then of course it benefits everyone on your team and also in your personal life.
Yeah, love it, love it. You have also a certification in World's Best Ever Certified in Live Inventory Assessment Coach. Tell
Yeah,
us
so the
about that.
first one, yes, it's a life inventory assessment. My good friend and leader of the life inventory assessment movement, if you will, is Maurice Thibodeau, and he's also in Canada. He's from Winnipeg, and
Mhm.
so he created an assessment tool that really helps coaches to be able to support clients in looking at 13 different areas of their life so that they can find focus, find what are some of the blind spots, some of the patterns, and then create really concrete actions so that they can move forward towards more fulfillment. So it applies to many different aspects. I use it a lot with leaders and also with others who are more self-leadership, which is, I think, a lot of what we'll talk about today is the self-leadership, because as you know, Kahila, I believe in leadership at all levels, all ages, all backgrounds.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have recently just launched a new Elevate and Scale Your Leadership program. So tell
Yes.
us a little bit about that one.
Oh, yes. Again, this is trying to bring together all these years of experience and insight working in HR, and also with my studies and various certifications, and helping thousands of clients with their leadership and also with their career development. And what I was able to discern is that there's various levels of engagement and leadership that people are interested in. So the program is divided into 3 tiers. The first one, is for the emerging leaders, for the sparks. So these are
Mm,
people who are kind of searching, is formal leadership for me, or do I want to be more of a self leader and make really great decisions in my life? So I think that piece of clarity is super important. A lot of people skip over that. They get promoted and don't necessarily think about how they want to show up as a leader. So that's an important piece. The next level is for managers and executives who
mm,
are getting into the formal leadership and learning how to engage, how to be the best version of themselves, how to pull that out from others. And the third level, which we're calling beacons, is really to help top leaders to not only make an impact within their organization, but actually to go beyond that into their communities, their countries, and even globally.
yeah, amazing. So far, everything you have shared us is all about leadership.
Yes,
We can tell
absolutely.
that you love that topic. And why did you fall in love with this,
With
especially the
leadership.
leadership part? Yeah.
Yeah, because definitely I find it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere, right? Every part
Mhm.
of our life, every time we make a decision, we need to call on, that part of ourselves, either consciously or subconsciously, to help us make that decision. And I believe that leadership is a force that's within each one of us that wants to do good and wants to come out into the world. And, in particular, which is important topic for this show, is about how do we remove some of those fears so that we can be the best version of ourselves and create the impact that we want in life. And I think that's why leadership is so important to me, because whenever I look around me, I see leaders everywhere, and some, take the high road, and others, well, they use that power for things that are not serving themselves or others, right? So is how do we inspire? And it's not just me, it's bringing together people who are also established leaders who've had that experience. How do we bring together that wisdom and create a platform to really shine a light on leadership that is, that wants to do good, leadership that unleashes forces for good, leaders who put people and planet first, and who create, of course, great products and services, and do that in a healthy and sustainable way.
Yeah, and it almost also sounds like you want to make workplace suffering, eliminate the workplace suffering
Absolutely.
through proper
Yes.
leadership.
Yeah, and that's a central theme, actually, because I've suffered myself, and
Mm.
working in HR, I saw many people suffer, and they were at all levels. You had your employees who were dealing with bosses who abused them, or maybe they were making bad decisions in their career, or perhaps they didn't know how to set boundaries. That was my biggest problem.
Mm.
Um, as well as leaders who are in formal leadership roles and they hate their life. It doesn't need to be that way. So why do we have so much suffering in workplaces, when really, when we're aligned, we're working on purpose? Then, nothing feels better than when you're doing work that you love with people you love, and are able to make that contribution. So let's remove some of those obstacles, some of those fears, some of those things that get in the way of us doing our work in meaningful, joyful, and fulfilling ways.
Yes, absolutely. So, Lisa, the first part of the show is talking about something that you were fearful about. And the
Hmm.
title you gave me was Courage to Lead. So, were
Hmm.
you always like this? Or is that something, there was something else that was in your,
Well,
in your
I you
past?
know, as a child, I was very fearful of,
Mm.
I hated the dark, afraid of the dark, and I still don't like it, I'll be honest with you. Now, what's interesting is that I wasn't as shy as a child. It emerged later on, probably in the, tweens, towards the teens.
Yeah.
I started becoming more shy, I guess, because I mean that's the part of our brain that develops when we start to become more aware. And while I was doing cartwheels and singing for people when I was little, all of a sudden I started to develop a fear of speaking in public,
Mm.
and it became, early on, it became quite serious, in that even though I was school council president, I was afraid to talk in front of classes. So I always got major anxiety attacks before I had to do that, to the point where I was asked to be valedictorian in the graduating class, and I turned it down because I was too afraid. I was
Yeah.
too afraid. Then that continued on for many years. I went to work in corporate. One of my first jobs was for a big six consulting firm, international
Mm.
consulting firm. So it was a great job. But they, of course, they wanted me to do presentations. And I was very young. I was like 22, 23. And I remember this one particularly, oh, terrorizing,
Mm.
traumatizing situation, where, because of the way it works in when you're working in consulting, sometimes you get called in to make presentations on a proposal like the next day. Well, I
Mm.
was still young, so my manager had produced the presentation, so I didn't really know what was in it. But I was going to be the assigned consultant. I was a junior consultant. I was going to be the one doing the work. So, ideally, we win the job, and then bring me in, and then train me up, and right. That's not what happened. The client came back, very senior public servants, very, very senior, came back and said, we want the consultant to make the presentation, the person that's going to be assigned. And so I found this out an hour before the presentation. And so out we headed. My manager decided that we should walk. It was like 40 below. It was an
Mm.
Ottawa winter. We should walk to the place. And of course, I got there. All my mascara was melting. And I was like all frazzled to begin with. So nervous, to the point where I could feel it in the pit of my stomach. And I felt nauseous. And it was very, very difficult. And of course, I got in front of this panel of very senior government officials. There were about 6 or 7 of them, and, you know, 30, 40 years older than me. And I had to make this presentation, which I knew nothing about. It
Mhm.
was horrifying. It was horrifying. It was.
Yeah.
Fortunately, my manager and the partner in charge of the group, they were quite understanding. I mean, I don't think they expect, but I felt horrible inside. And that
Mhm.
really marked me for about a good 10 years.
Wow.
In that I had gone back to take some courses in HR in my mid-20s, mid to late 20s. And we had to make a presentation. It was at University of Windsor, and I choked. I got up there, and like the anxiety was just too strong. I couldn't open my throat big
Throat.
enough to be able to have words come out of it. And I was sweating and all that. So I had a major, I would say, anxiety, borderline panic attack in front of the class. So that was, again, very, very difficult. And so for many years, I kind of just went into my shell. And
Mhm.
I'd come out once in a while, make little presentations of things that, I was sure about, for example, performance management or vacation leave or whatever. Certainly never speaking from the heart until I started my own business when I was 40. And then I got clear on my purpose.
Mhm.
I got clear, and then I realized what I was being called to do, which is to speak about leadership and speak about how do you set boundaries so you don't burn out at work and all those good things. I realized that whatever you want in life is going to be outside your comfort zone. So I focused, and I used that strong sense of purpose and that calling to pull me through my fear.
Mhm.
So I focused on it, and then I'll share some strategies later on how, what I did to get through that. All that to today, where I'm actually a keynote speaker. I'm a podcast host of Little Talks, and I do presentations, I MC panels, etc. And the good news is that I'd say the biggest success is how I feel inside about it.
Yeah.
The nausea is gone. I don't feel like I'm about to have a panic attack, and it just feels great, and it feels like I've come home to myself. So yeah. So anyone out there who's got that horrible stage fright, I never thought I'd get through it. Good news is you can. It takes work, and you can.
Perfect. Yeah. I mean, you're living proof.
That's
Yeah,
right.
right? So tell me, what was the turning point? Tell us, what was the turning point for you? That
Yeah.
finding your why? You said you a little bit meant.
Yes. Yeah. So it started slowly. Actually, there's funny stories around it. I don't know if we have time
Yeah,
for
go ahead.
all of them, but maybe I'll share one of them. So I know exactly the weekend that it happened. It was back in 2013. I became a certified passion test facilitator. So that's where you identify your top 5 passions in life, and then so that way you can make informed decisions and make good choices to align your life to what's important to you. So as part of that, I was kind of participating, but the requirement to get your certificate was 100% participation. And I have this, I still have a little bit of difficulty. If I'm learning something, I need to integrate it first before I kind of am able to present it. Like I really need to
Mm,
sit with it, work through it, and then it comes out smoothly. If I don't do that, it comes out all over the place.
mhm.
So nowadays, 10, 13 years later, I'm okay with that, right? I can work through it.
Yeah.
But back then I was still quite self-conscious. So anyways, I'm getting certified, and on the last day, they said, okay, so it's 100% participation. And then they called up there's about 20 people in the class. They called up about 6 of us who hadn't participated as much. So they said, this is your last chance. And, this is going to be very silly, but it worked. It really did. It was a turning point. So each one of us had to present, but do
Mhm.
it in a funny way. So
Oh.
I had to present pretending I was a chicken.
Oh.
So I had to clock my way through, the first 3 minutes of the introduction, and everybody was laughing. And you know what? That was my turning point because I was laughing too.
Yeah.
And then I was like, you know what? If I could do this, I could do anything.
Yeah.
And I didn't die. I didn't. And on the contrary, people were very supportive, and they were laughing, and And that was my turning point. And then after that, I decided, you know what, I'm going to focus on it. I'm going to find ways, be it training or putting myself out there a little bit more, using more humor. So opening up my heart a bit more, speaking from the heart. I found that was one of the strategies that helped the most, is
Mm,
to get out of my head and drop into my heart, and not try
mm,
to have too many scripts or try to regurgitate material. It was like, trust that whatever I'm going to say is what the audience needs to hear at that moment, and whatever isn't said, well, I could say it another time, and that took the pressure off for me. So yeah, so that's my fun turning point.
yeah, that's why they say act or improvise. Go to those
Right.
classes,
Yeah.
right? Because then
Yeah.
you can really get out of
Yeah.
feeling like everyone's watching and I can't screw up. Like,
Exactly, and you know what's cool, it's like when you add humor to it, I really believe fun is fuel, and humor is a healer in a lot of sense,
yes.
in a lot of ways. If probably if the whole class would have looked at me and not laughed, it would have been a different. I probably would have retreated even further. But it was such a joyous kind of outcome that it's like, yeah, I could do this, and I could be
Yes.
myself and
Yeah.
engage people. So yeah.
So, how much of that do you think came from judgment? I like to compare the
Mm,
fear to the judgment. Was it part of that? Do you
yeah, that
think?
was a big part of it, I think. Judgment, um, running out of things to say, making
Mm,
mistakes, tripping on the way up to the stage. I mean, people pointing and laughing. It could be, but not in a good way. So it was a number of different things that really kept me from speaking. But the number one thing was, I think, because I'd had panic attacks and like anxiety attacks at other times, and I had that very difficult situation where I got up there and really bombed, basically. I think that kind of added to the feeling of angst whenever I wanted to go out and share and speak, right? So it took several years to pull away the layers to the point where I feel comfortable like I do now. Like, even
mm,
during the journey, I was still nervous. I was still very nervous at many different points, except I had learned how to calm myself down. An example was, I was taking an expert speaker. Um, I was enrolled in a program, and it took a couple people to calm me down to just like get
mhm,
on stage. Once I opened my mouth, though, I started to start things started coming out, and that's why I realized, like, the biggest part for me, and every person has to figure out for themselves. The biggest part for me was to get up on the stage.
mm,
That's a part, and start talking. So that was the part that scared me the most.
yeah.
And again, like, looking back, it's like, figure out which part is the part that makes it more difficult for you as an individual, right? Is it getting up on the stage? Is it, halfway through? What is it? Because then once you have that in your awareness, then you can start doing things to address it, right?
Mhm, mhm. Do you ever look for um, people's approval from the audience? Like if you're talking to them, like do you want to see people nodding and
Oh,
listen?
that's a great question. I'm glad you asked that question, because that's what I was looking for at first. Right?
Mm,
At first I was thinking, okay, so if they like what I'm going to say, they're going to start,
mm,
clapping, or, nodding their head or smiling,
yeah.
right? And then I get up there and I'm looking at the audience, especially the first couple rows, because you can't really see past that. And like, people are staring, and they have kind of like a blank look on their face. And I'm
Face.
like, oh, so of course I start telling myself stories. They hate what I'm saying. It's not
Mm,
making any sense. They're bored or whatever. And then sure enough, after a couple times, like after a number of people coming up to me, the ones with the blank look on their face
face.
coming up to me saying, that was really awesome. It helped me a lot. I was taking it all in. So then I realized that the
Mm,
expression of taking it all in, of processing, can look like a blank stare. So I don't let that get to me anymore, because now I know it's like they're listening, they're engaged.
yeah. And
So
reading the body language of your audience is so
right,
knowing that it doesn't mean anything reflected towards you. It's their own
right.
internal
And
processing.
what's interesting, because I note this myself when I'm an audience member, is that we're not always aware what our face looks like when we're in the audience. Right?
Yeah.
So people don't know that they're sitting there, like making faces,
I could be drinking coffee or
right?
looking at my phone and then
Right.
looking at the person, and then I don't even have any connection to them sometimes, you know?
Right, right. So it's kind of interesting that way. So now, like, I put myself more in the shoes of the
Oh,
audience, and I
dance.
say, well,
Yeah.
I'm an audience member too, and I'm not always aware of what my face looks like when I'm watching somebody. Doesn't mean
Yeah.
I'm bored or anything. If I'm just like looking, right? So
No.
that's I'm glad you asked that question, because a lot of people get put off, especially if they don't speak often in public. They might get, that's what they're looking around, they're seeing people staring at them without any expression, that might start to trigger like some sort of an anxiety reaction, right?
Yeah.
Instead, if you realize, like, no, sometimes when they just look at you without an expression, they're listening, they're taking it all in, and they're processing. It's just the
Yeah.
way people look when they think. So
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Absolutely. Because I have that too, so that's why I asked. I'm looking for my nodding heads. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. We
yeah.
can keep going. But I
Right.
love what you said there was I got out of my head and got into my heart. Right? Is that what you
Mhm.
said? Yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
It's so
yes,
important. That's
yes.
where everything lies.
Absolutely. And that's when we speak truth. And that's what really gets people, it resonates, right?
Yeah.
And I found that I was able to do that just by consciously thinking about it. It's like, okay, and I still get in my head sometimes. It's just that now I
Yeah.
know how to just like do deep breathing and then go back to, okay, it's not about me. It's about me sharing a message that can help people. It's
Yes.
about the people I want to help. I'm here to serve. It doesn't have to be perfect. That's not what resonates with people.
Yes.
What resonates with people is when you're speaking from your heart and you're sharing a message with the good intent of trying to help.
Hope.
And once
Absolutely.
you start to come back to that purpose, and that purpose of service, then the focus goes away from you messing up and all that, and it goes on to, like, let me connect with the hearts of the people in this audience because I want to help them, and that
Yes.
changes everything.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Lisa. I have one last question is
Yeah.
what would you tell your younger self about fear?
What I tell myself, it would be, it's not forever, and that there are things you could do to move through it.
Mhm.
And there are so many resources. For example, I love the book by Susan Jeffers, Feel the Fear, Do It Anyway. That's helped me a
Mhm.
lot. Another one is one by my friend Akshay Nanavati. It's Fear Vana. It's all about embracing change. So do the resources, take one step at a time, be self-compassionate, have that self-compassion. If you mess up, try to laugh about it, and just
Yeah.
like never lose sight of your vision of why you're doing it. It's important. People need to hear your story, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Lisa. We'll continue on to our wisdom circle, but if you do have to go, thank you for tuning into our show, and I'll see you next Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific time. And if you're interested in making learning easy for your child, please book a Clarity coaching call with one of our certified learning success coaches at Learning Success Academy. Until next time, see what's on the other side of your fear and help your children. So, Lisa, we're going to continue on to our wisdom circle. Here, I would like to ask you to share some strategies for parents who are watching us.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you, Kohila, and thank you again for having me here. So when we're supporting our kids, again, right? Try to help them to realize that they don't have to be perfect,
Mhm.
and normalize. So listen to them. If they're talking about how they're afraid, or maybe they don't even mention it, but they start to act afraid and you notice it, right? Go through the steps. Like, attend to them, say, how you doing? Of course, it's normal to feel afraid. Most
Mhm.
people do feel afraid about speaking in public. It's hard
Mhm.
to do, and you can list some reasons why it's scary. And you can ask them, like, what's coming up for you? How does it feel in your body? How does it feel? And then once you normalize and validate that, that it's common, then you can maybe start talking about strategies. What are
Yes.
some things that we can do to help you? You know, maybe you can practice in front of a small group in front of us, or does it help maybe for you to go prepare the material ahead of time and go through it on your own and then practice? And then you could talk about strategies about dropping into your heart. Children know these things inherently, right? We forget
Yes.
about them sometimes, but they know what it's like to go from within, things that are meaningful, to speak from the heart, and also name it, right? Say, when we're getting ready to speak and do something scary, it's not just for speaking, but for anything.
Yeah.
Sometimes we hear voices that tell us, our own voice is judging us, and again, say that's a regular thing to do that happens. So remember, you could talk back to that voice and say, you know what, I'm scared, I'm worried, and this is important, so I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to do my very best, and people are going to appreciate that I've done my very best. I don't have to be perfect, I just have to
Mhm.
be truthful, and slowly help them grow their comfort zone by, a small audience. Maybe if they're younger, put stuffed animals, arrange them around them, and pretend that they're the audience. Have some fun with it. Just like make them cluck it out. Just like I had
Yeah.
to fashion test, you know, right? Or make them say, another person there who hadn't participated as much had to pretend she was a baby and delivery,
Mhm.
giving the training in a baby voice. So make some fun out of it, and just say, you know what, no matter what happens, we love you,
Mhm.
and we believe that you're going to do well. And just by showing up, you're already a leader. You're already a winner,
Yes.
right?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And another thing is dining, have during the dinners, right?
Yeah,
Like a
absolutely.
lot of the time during Thanksgiving and Christmas time, I always ask my family members to tell what they're grateful for. But
Yeah,
even that, giving them that opportunity in front of 8 or 9 people to say what they're grateful for or what they're looking forward to this year, it helps them that opportunity to voice their,
yeah,
show their
I
voice.
love that. I love that. Yeah, and you're creating that safe space without judgment. It's not
Yeah.
time to judge when somebody's trying. You can give them feedback later on,
Yes.
suggestions. Make sure it's very gentle, and just celebrate the fact that they found their voice. I love that you do that, Kohila. Other
Yeah.
strategies, of course, are there are tons of courses out there,
Yes.
right? So uh, enrolling in courses. Of course, there's always the Toastmasters. I don't know if there's one for
Yep.
younger kids, but yeah, so Toastmasters, or even as they get older. I think once you're 18, there's a really great organization called Junior Chamber International. I'm actually going to be delivering a talk there, similar to here, sharing my story about that. Getting them involved in those kinds of situations where they can learn the
Mhm.
strategies, learn the approaches, and there's many different ones, and also age appropriate books about conquering fear. And one of the key messages that we can share that I know works with my clients of all ages is to remind them that, first of all, you're not alone.
Mhm.
Anytime we want to create something really great in our life, we're going to feel fear, and it's going to be outside our comfort zone. So we
Mhm.
have to figure out, how do we get from here to there? It might mean taking courses, it might mean practicing, it might mean doing all kinds of different things. And it's one step at a time. And
Yeah.
of course, any exercises that we can teach our children about breathing, and just like bringing our system down to more steady, settled states, grounding exercises, those are really great to teach them how to use those and to call on those. I know I did it a lot, especially at
Yes.
first, before even getting on the stage. Even that whole day before, I was doing breathing exercises just to be able to get to that point. And then even like while you're speaking, talk about strategies if you get stuck, because that's when people
Mm.
start to develop panic, right? Or anxieties. If they get stuck, they don't know what to do with it. So talk
Yes.
about strategies. Okay, if you get stuck, first of all, remember that a pause always seems longer to you than it does to the audience. So it's
Mm.
okay to take your time. When you speak slower, it has more power anyway, right? So just putting things into context. And if you get really, really stuck, then use humor and move on to your next subject. So those are all things to help equip our youth to be able to, not only confront our fear of speaking, but of course, once you confront that one, which is a big one, which a lot of people have, once you confront that fear, is like, then you learn that those strategies apply to many different aspects of our lives, be it for a job interview, be it for, applying for different programs or whatnot. Once you start to learn that you have the power to grow your comfort zone Once you
Mhm.
learn that, then you become unstoppable, because then it becomes more of a thrill than it does fear. It's like, okay, so I'm starting to feel a little bit of fear. I'm pushing the envelope here. And instead of retreating, you go towards it and you say,
Yeah.
okay, what can I do? This is my next challenge. I'm going to break through this fear.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said few things there that's very, very important for parents to focus on with their children, right? Now, one of them is this about breathing, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and it's for everything, as you said, even decision making.
Mm-hmm.
You know, take a
Mm-hmm.
deep breath and slow it down so you can actually think, right? Because a lot of the time when it, even on tests, like I help students write their help them with preparing for that test, and it's most of the time it's because they're holding, they just take a deep breath and they never let it go and they're just
Right.
paralyzing themselves.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So breathing is so important. And the
Mhm.
next part was you said, you know, my one of my methodology is talk to your brain. It's about challenging and talking to the brain. It seems like you
Mhm.
did that to
Mhm.
yourself as well
Yes.
during your
Yes.
episodes, right? Those
Yes.
anxiety episodes or those
Yes.
panic episodes.
Yes. Yes, definitely. Starting to say, okay, well, first of all, realizing that I was judging myself. I was my
Yes.
worst judge, and then pushing back and saying, you know what, I've got something to say that will help people. So I might feel fear. I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Calming yourself, learning to do that. And that's something that children can learn from so young, right? It's easy to
Hmm.
them to catch their what are their brain is saying to them and then say, you know what, that's not how I want to feel, or that's not what will help me to do what I'm trying to accomplish.
I love that.
Yes,
Yes. Yes.
rephrasing it with them would help them too. So,
Mhm.
anything else you want to add to this topic of? Let's talk about a little bit about leadership, fear
Yes.
and leadership. How do they
Yes.
tie together?
Yes, absolutely. So, a central theme in my book, Light a Fire in Their Hearts, and also the work I do is that what sets great leaders apart is their ability to connect through
Mhm.
compassion, courage, and competence. Right. So when we talk about leadership, a central theme is that courage. So courage is learned. Yes, some of us have more courage than others. When in an innate way. However, even if we don't have courage, we can learn. We can learn to be courageous. And that's good news because it's not
Yes.
static. We're not,
Yes.
and that's sometimes what I find. Certainly my younger self, thought I'm going to be afraid of speaking for my entire life.
Yeah.
And that ended up not being true at all. Right. But had I believed that thought, right? So
Yes.
as a leader, we have to make decisions. We have a lot of decisions to make. So when we are faced with fear, it's kind of like a fork in the road. It's like, am I going to retreat and shy away from doing this important thing I want to do, or this way I want to serve? Or am I going to decide to do it anyway and work out the fear, do the
Yes.
strategies that I've learned, or maybe learn more, or get a mentor, or talk to people who also had that fear before, so that I can see that I'm not alone, right?
Mhm.
So, in terms of fear and leadership, I find a lot of times people are held back from attaining their highest potential in leadership, and it's because of fear.
Yes.
Be it fear of talking to your employees. 69% of managers are afraid to talk to their employees.
Yes.
So, it's not just talking in front of audiences, it's even talking one on one, right?
Mhm. Yep.
And so then my decision becomes, well, do I want to be a great leader and be able to engage with my employees and do what I need to do to learn how to counteract that fear? Or do I just, continue being a leader who doesn't interact with my employees, which is not a good way to be, right? You're not really a leader. You may be a manager, but you're not a leader. So, I think that leadership is a journey in removing blocks and fears
Mhm.
from helping us and others. So we're not only helping ourselves to remove our blocks and fears, but helping others to remove their blocks and fears so that we can all achieve our goals, attain our greatest potential, unleash, forces for good, and to get everybody to be the best version of themselves. Because ultimately, I think that's one of the things that as people we're the most afraid of, is to be ourselves, our
Yes.
authentic selves.
Yes. It's very hard. It is definitely hard. But when you do it, it becomes natural, right? When you start doing it, it's so easy.
Right. And that's when you start removing those fears of being judged, fear of not showing up properly or perfectly, right? So that, I mean, perfectionism at the heart of it is fear of not, you
Yeah.
know, doing a good job, right? So yeah, definitely. I think if one of the biggest skill sets that you can develop in a leader is that courage. Is if you
Courage.
help them to find the courage to be authentic, the courage to be vulnerable, to be themselves, to have the impact, have a great impact to the degree that they feel called to do. Oftentimes, people hold back because of fear. So, if you help them learn how to remove those fears, they become unstoppable, right?
Yes, absolutely. And also, I think courage to also be wrong and in front of others
Yes,
as a leader, right? You don't
yes.
always have to be right. You don't always have to know everything. That makes a better leader.
Yes, absolutely. And that points to intellectual humility, where
Yeah.
it takes, and you know what? It takes the pressure off. Actually, uh, and that's why I say let's help you love your life as a leader, because it can be so rewarding and so great. If you remove those blocks, if you learn how to do that, and it becomes a
Mhm.
lifelong journey, right? Because you get rid of one fear, another one pops up, right? Um, but it's also having that intellectual humility to understand that we don't have to be perfect, and that others might have a lot to contribute to us, and we can learn from them and they can learn from us. It's like a cycle. And
Mhm.
yeah, definitely that's an important part of it. So yeah, leadership and courage go together, right? And that's to say that if somebody feels called to lead, hopefully, you know, everybody gets called to be a self leader, a leader in their
Mhm.
life. And if you're called to lead in a formal leadership capacity, growing that courage over time is super important, not only for yourself, also for the people you're leading, for your organization, and you want to inspire others to do the same, right?
Absolutely.
Inspire the courage for people to be their best version of themselves. And once you create that, it's really a profound impact that you're
Yes.
having. Yeah.
Absolutely. Love the topic, courage to lead, and how courage really, really stems from removing your blocks and fears.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So that's where the true leadership lies. So this is an amazing topic. Thank you, Lisa, so much for coming in. Do you want to add anything, your last words to our viewers?
Yes. You know what? If you feel fear,
Mm.
have the instinct to go ask, is it because it's life threatening? Then if it is, of course you want to follow that, or if there's a huge risk. If not, usually it's about us holding ourselves back from attaining our true potential. And when
Mm.
that's the answer, then do whatever you can to either support yourself or support others, be it your children, to figure out ways to remove those blocks and grow that courage and move through that fear. And that's why we call it a breakthrough, right? We want to
Mm.
break through that fear to attain the amazing things that are on the other side of our comfort zone.
Yes, absolutely. And expand your comfort zone.
Expand,
And your
absolutely.
comfort zone, you also said. Thank you so much. Such a privilege to talk to you today. So, thank you everyone for tuning into our show. We will go live again on Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific time. If you're interested in making learning easy for your child, please book a call with our certified learning success coaches at Learning Success Academy. Until next time, see what's on the other side of the fear. And let's ignite and inspire our children to push past their fear and make fear not a factor for them. And let them have the courage to lead.
That's great. Thank you so much, Sohila.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you.